The guy who's researching swinging, Dr. Chris Hayward from Newcastle University, I sat down with him and talked to him about what he's found. And he came up with two interesting insights, both of which I agreed with. And it's in this week's Turned On with Sue and John. If you haven't heard my podcast, it's epic. And every week we do a whole section called So, You're a Swinger. And I'm just back from Swingathon. And what he said was that there's a whole group of Gen Z, the whole idea of those young swingers. And what they're doing is they're not really identifying as swingers, but they're meeting up at swing clubs because they're open. Some of them are goth, some of them are poly, some of them just want a place where they're not feeling like they're going to get their asses pinched at a regular bar or pub. And that there's a whole movement going on. So they're meeting at swing clubs and then going for dinner. And it's just about community and how that's going. And it was really interesting for me to see how many young swingers there were at Swingathon. Average age for most swinging groups is about, I don't know, I would say 40, anywhere between 38 and 44, that kind of range. I'm a little older than average, but there were a lot of younger swingers there, camping out, just having a ball. And it was really interesting because you didn't necessarily see them playing, but they wanted to make friends and they were having community. The second thing is, and I've long said women run the lifestyle. Like it's, if the women aren't interested, the guys are sitting around with their hands in their pocket. But there's a lot of women, and the downside of it is that sometimes the guys are saying, well, to the women, go find me somebody. I want to smack them. Because this is not about pimping out your husband, and it shouldn't feel pressured to do that. Because it's not fair. And I always say, if you're at that stage and you're really horny and your sex drive is up and you really want to play. And I had an ex that described monogamy as running a marathon with one foot up on the curb. He wasn't wired for monogamy. And for a lot of guys, that's the case. And I totally respect that. What I say to them is either A, figure out how you're going to negotiate it with a long-term partner and get it yourself, or B, pay for it. And, going to get a rub and tug or massage, and not everybody agrees with me on this. I think sex work is work. I think it's, if it was 10 pounds or $10, you would do it every day after work. I know you would. Like, forget the coffee you have every morning at Starbucks, because that's what it would cost. It's really just the price. When I was in Thailand, and I'm going back in January if you want to come with me and have a nightlife tour of ethical but really cool. For $30 you can have full service. For $50 you get it with 3 women. I'm telling you, for half an hour. That's your fantasy. Consider an inexpensive trip to the sex capital of the world. But playfulcoconuts.com, have a look at it. But the reality is that you've got to find your way. You got to figure out what works for you. I did this talk at Swingathon, and it's about basically don't take one for the team. Do not, under any circumstances, feel like you can do something that you go yuck. Because if you don't feel like hell yes, you come out of it and you get resentful. Because the person who's the least interested should be made to feel the most encouraged, the most supported, and like having the most amount of fun. So if I had one piece of advice for people who are trying to convince their partner to sort of at least look at the lifestyle, is to make it as fun and interesting. There was a quick story. I met a woman who, she said, her ex was trying to convince her. And I guess they were on holidays and there was a club, and she said, come on, let's have a look at it. And had an absolute ball, and now is deep into the lifestyle. And she said then she and her ex broke up, not because of that. But she decided she was going to be in the lifestyle because that was the way she was going to get sex, going to make friends, and it's really well policed, way better again than being in a bar where somebody's going to put something in your drink. The clubs, because people know each other. Like I was on the other side of the Atlantic, met people who we all had friends in common because the lifestyle's for that place. You can't be a jerk. Like, don't be an asshole. Like, it's a thing because the reputation precedes you even on the other side of the planet. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't meet friends, but I knew people that knew people. And the idea is that it's safe. So she said, I felt safe. I was a single woman. I did exactly what I wanted. And then she met her current partner in the lifestyle. They're lovely. I got to tell you, I must have met, I don't know, at least 15 couples. And the couple I brought with me met in the lifestyle. So, they meet their primary partner, they're committed, they're together, and they play, and often play separately, but they are each other's primary and mean it significantly. There's lots of love there. So it's a thing. So that's what I saw this week at Swingathon. If you want to hear more about it and some of the stuff, check out the podcast, Turned On with Sue and John. I do it with one of the world's best broadcasters. He's on in 30 markets across North America, like world class. And you get me and my thoughts. At this point, I'm 30 plus years as a therapist and been running all over the world talking about the lifestyle. I get the best job in the world. Turned On with Sue and John, turnedonpodcast.com.